want to see whether or not I'm
Just
on
people
the
post questions in the chat and all that kind of stuff, so that's why I want to have it.
Ah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're live.
Okay.
Oh.
This looks like it. So, hello everybody. This is Jim McKeith coming to you live from the Austin office, and I got a table here with people around me, so I'm going to twist the camera. Let's see if I can see myself here. Okay, there it is. So we'll just start here and we'll go around. Oops. All right, this is my ghetto tripod you see here. So apparently that didn't work as well as I thought it was going to work. So go here. David.
Hello, hi everyone.
David's visiting. Oh, come on. Try this like that. Oh, that's better. Okay. So David is here from Estonia.
That's right, yeah.
Doing your round the world tour.
Yeah, I am. I'm actually going all the way around the world. So Estonia west until I return. So hello from Austin. It's fantastic to be here in the Embarcadero Idea offices. I normally talk to you from my home office instead of from the Embarcadero office. Good to be here.
All right. And then over here is Mary Kelly.
Hello.
So Mary Kelly is one of our software consultants here in the Austin office. Been doing some webinars recently on C++ and Interbase and all sorts of great stuff.
The fun stuff.
The fun stuff. And then also here with us is Serena.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, Serena's been on the podcast a couple times before. You're one of our
Yes.
product managers.
That's right.
Extraordinaire.
Thank you, thank you. I have never been on a video podcast with you, but I've been on the audio one.
Yeah, and you've been on quite a few Code Rages and other webinars and product
and focusing a lot on
launches and-
FireMonkey and Fire UI and all the great things that RAD Studio has to offer.
Yeah. All right. And then over here is Craig.
regular whipping boy, but I don't usually come into the office for the podcast. I also usually appear from home.
Yeah. So yeah, since we're all here in the Austin office, that we get together here and chat. So Glenn says hello from Portland. So I've got a few people getting online with us already here. So that's great. So we'll come back around here to me, I guess. Okay, this was a really poorly thought out tripod. I will. I'll just swap this tripod out here.
Why don't you swap the camera?
Yeah. Well, I have a 360 camera, which I thought I might do a little bit 360 here. Just, maybe not. Oh, that one's broken. Okay. So anyway, I thought we'd just kind of talk a little bit about what's, a little bit about everybody here that's on the call with us. I had invited some other people, but not everybody could make it, unfortunately. And apparently I'll get some tape for that later or something. And we just kind of talk about some of the stuff that's going on, some of the stuff, why we're excited. Actually, just at lunch. So David, we just got back from lunch.
We did.
And I was talking to David on the way back, and I'll just kind of slide over here so we can both get the frame. There we go. And I was talking to David about how, I was really excited about this Cameo thing I was looking at for a way to host Rad Studio as maybe a trial thing or something. So it's something I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so excited about this. And here we're at lunch, we're supposed to be relaxing and not talking about work, and all I want to do is talk about work and stuff. And it's neat to have a job that, when I'm on vacation or when I'm at lunch or when I'm, not working, it's just exciting. And we were talking, about that. You're kind of the same way, right?
Well, I am. I mean, it's a very exciting thing to work for Embarcadero. So, yeah, it's the kind of thing you sort of dedicate a lot of time to and you enjoy dedicating a lot of time to.
Yeah.
I think.
Because, it's one of those things. I was talking to someone else that was a developer advocate for their company. It says one of those things that when you become a developer advocate for a company, that it's like, this is what I used to do for fun, is go out in the community and talk to people and make demos and try things and stuff like that. He said so he had a hard time with his wife convincing her that, no, I'm actually working right now. this is work. Because it is similar to what you do for fun. So now, last night we were talking about education. And you have a degree in computer science, right?
Yep. So
what was the kind of area, what did you kind of study in school?
In my computer science?
In computer science, yeah.
Crikey, that's going a few years back. Oddly enough, the main thing I remember is that we only did one semester of C++.
Yeah?
So I mean, we started off in Java, I think, in computer science. I'd been programming for years before then.
Right.
I got started on a BBC microcomputer, which probably if you're in America you might not have heard of, but if you're in Australia or England or something, it was made by the BBC, the television company. Actually those chips eventually went on to become ARM.
Oh, really?
That's how I started.
Wasn't it the CMOS 6502 chip for the BBC?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah,
So it would have been RISC architecture, the early part of it.
It was just one of the very early RISC chips, I think. Yeah, then Turbo Pascal after that.
Okay.
But yeah, in uni we started studying Java instead.
What version of Turbo Pascal did you start with? Just curious. Do you remember?
I think the first one was 5.5,
5.5?
but I really got into it with 7.
It was 7, yeah.
Yeah.
7 was great.
Mm.
I think I started in 3, but I think we're swinging around because I think you have a meeting next,
Yes,
Rita.
I
So
do.
we'll swing around to 3
Hello
here.
again.
Hello
Hi.
again.
Hi.
So now you're the product manager here with Embarcadero. We've talked to you
Right.
before about that. What's some of the things you do as a product manager?
Well, we plan features, we work on roadmaps, we take a lot of customer feedback into consideration, we work on all the great things that, looking ahead, where the industry is going, and look at how that impacts future product plans. Specifically, I work a lot on FireMonkey because that's something I'm really interested in, multi-device applications. Something I've been focusing on for a long time. I've been here almost 7 years, so I think this June will be my 7th year at Embarcadero.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's very exciting, and I really like. I think one of the greatest things about working here is that we're working on a lot of innovative technology, and we make lives of developers easier every single day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something I think is really exciting. We make it so easy for you to build apps for multiple platforms, the same code base, whether using Delphi or C++. And we're continuing to innovate in those areas and beyond, and looking at where the industry is going, the type of features our customers will be needing tomorrow and next year, and that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah. So now you've been product manager for like other software companies
Yes,
before.
I have.
Yeah, you were working on some like graphics art software.
Yes,
or something.
prior to Embarcadero, I was a software product manager for manga and cartoon software. So illustration software and animation software, and that's a 2D and 3D, so that's also a really big market. And a lot of the products were used in TV shows you see, etc. So came from that really big graphics background, and so that was something I was really interested in. So then when I came to Embarcadero, it's really natural for me to be, really interested in FireMonkey because it's so UI focused.
Yeah.
It's something that I take a lot of pride in, nice user interfaces and attention to detail, and doing a lot of blog posts to show customers how to use styles and how to use the style book and all the functionality that FireMonkey provides. Because when you go from a Windows application to mobile, there's a lot of things to keep in mind, right? Different form factors, user interfaces, guidelines by the different application stores. So all those things I've spent countless hours learning and tracking and following over the years to ensure that we make it easy for customers to build very nice looking UIs.
Yeah. So Boyan Mitov is online, said hello everybody.
Hi, Boyan.
Hello.
And Roland's on, says hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
And Glenn commented that Java is something you drink, not code in, which I thought about that.
Glenn, I actually have a cup of coffee here with the label Java Rama on it.
Java-rama, there we go. So
New programming name.
that's what the
Oh yeah. If you
went to
see
college
that.
all about Java-rama. I was gonna. You brought up the fact that you do a lot of focus on UI and stuff like that. I was gonna say that you really clearly have a good eye for that sort of thing from your background in graphics and stuff. Because you're kind of the person that does the great webinars around that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I do a lot of the screenshots you see too, like for the website.
Oh, your screenshots are always the best.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Photoshop and Illustrator and all the graphics tools. I've used them for a very long time, and so I like to look at what can you do to really showcase all the great features the product has to offer. And one of the things is a lot of times it's sample applications, so like the mobile code snippets and the multi-device samples that we have in the product is also something I was really involved with, wanting to make sure that they all adhere to UI guidelines, so they have the proper margins and alignments set. So if you just come into the product, you can easily go ahead and say, hey, how do I connect to a location sensor, right? And then you just go ahead and drag and drop a component, or you try one of the code snippets, and just a couple lines of code, you can easily get your current location. And so just looking at all the different functionalities and how do we encapsulate that in easy-to-use demos.
Yep. My camera is slowly twisting for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Well, it's not moving.
It's not moving? Okay.
The monster.
So now, what's something recently we've done with Rad Studio that you're pretty excited about?
The FireMonkey UI templates. So I've been featuring them past 2 weeks or so in blog posts, and you can download them via the Get It Package Manager in 10.2.3. So the FireMonkey UI templates, what we did there is we built 18 different user interface templates spread across 6 different categories. And each of those categories has 3 very unique looking templates. So we have a number of login screens, sign up screens, account screens, profile screens, home screens, and settings screens. So all the different types of screens that you need in a multi-device application, and we came up with very unique designs for each. You can use them in your own applications. They each use a custom FireMonkey premium style. They use very nice looking graphics to really show you all the possibilities with FireMonkey.
Yeah.
That's something we really want to focus more and more on in blog posts, etc., on videos, is to really show the functionality and what you can do with FireMonkey. Because one of the things I found is whenever I do videos and blog posts with a lot of screenshots, people really seem to like them, and I get a lot of great comments on, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And so we've provided a number of ready-to-use, out-of-the-box templates now that customers can use.
I think that's a great thing because I think it was you guys talking about the whole idea of being a full-stack developer, David? I guess I'll spin the camera back around.
I think it was, yes.
So it's not pointing at Serena, I'm talking to David. But, because here recently we have the idea, we talk about, full stack developers. Okay, I'm not in frame. There we go. Now I'm in frame. You hear a lot of people talking about full stack developers as the people that are able to do, the functionality, JavaScript stuff, and then also the CSS and the HTML. But really, Delphi was like the first full stack developer tool because it was like when you do in Delphi, you do the whole everything, And so that's one of the things I think a lot of times we as developers we focus on the functionality and forget there's an important design aspect, user experience and stuff like that as well.
I think design is very, very important.
It is.
I mean, Serena is very good at design, and one thing I want to do in the IDE and the tools is improve the design and how usable it is for you guys, make it elegant and good to use. Was something we'll be focusing on.
10.2.1 that we had all the new themes and buttons and stuff?
So 10.2.2. So we introduced a whole bunch of new component icons, and also the dark theme for the IDE. And
that was 10.2.2.
Yeah. Obviously, we have lots of work planned, but we can't really talk about it until it's out there.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's go swing around here and let's talk to Mary Kelly here. If I can do this without getting the microphone in the way. There you are. All right.
Hello.
So, Mary Kelly, tell us a little bit about you and your background, where you come from. You studied software development in school, I think. Was it?
To a degree, I mostly did physics,
Physics.
mathematics.
I love physics. Oh.
Yeah, it's my favorite topic in the world. So physics, math, I more or less went to school and said, okay, I have a multitude of subjects I want to learn, and decided, okay, I'm going to go get degrees in each of them. So it was mostly like software engineering and things like that, more than just programming and whatnot, since I was like, well, I have physics and I have to do enough programming in that. Mathematical physics requires that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, when you're sitting there in some random code editor and you're just like, I don't know how to solve this at all. So, you kind of have to go back and forth between pencil and paper, and programming makes your life a lot easier.
It does.
Yeah, so, but I actually am probably slightly different from everyone here in that I actually learned from Borland. I guess like with you guys, before I even went to school, Borland gave me a license for C++ Builder. So I actually learned how to program in general on our products.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of cool, and from that perspective, I'm like, okay, cool. I learned how to be a C++ programmer. I didn't learn Delphi. I learned that when I, more or less found out about Embarcadero, and it was like, hey. But I learned C++, it just being able to sort of open up the IDE and kind of make my own little applications. I had a C++ Builder 6 license, and, I used Kylix, and I, sort of just went to town on trying whatever I could just to learn programming, and apparently I decided to keep with it, so.
I had a friend that was an economics major in school, and he took a class that required a programming, and he realized he had no idea what he was doing. And someone said, you should use Delphi. And so he's like, okay, so he got Delphi and did his found. He's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And so even though he got a degree in economics, he became a software developer just because the Delphi was just that powerful. Yeah. And one of the things I love recently is we have the starter editions free now.
Right.
Which means that we can get more developers, that get that chance to grab this powerful tool and just go to town and learn programming on there and get cool stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we seeded it out to the market for students and just basically any kid who was interested in programming. I mean, I sort of growing up, I enjoyed taking apart computers, and then was told by my father, you have to know how to put them back together though. So he said, before I give you another one, know what you're doing. So I was like, wait, you mean I actually have to know how this works and this works? Why doesn't it turn on? I screwed in all the pieces correctly. It's like, what'd you do there, kid? So, I mean, C++ has always kind of been big in embedded systems and things like that, and especially with computers. I mean, the majority of computers run some form of C++. It's what the world uses in the background of everything.
Have you done anything with Arduino?
I have, actually.
Yeah,
I love Arduino.
See, we're going to introduce David to some Arduino here later today, hopefully.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Arduinos are fun. Arduino and Raspberry Pi are sort of two big things that I enjoy because I do a lot of like building solid-state Tesla coils.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, that's a big hobby of mine. Actually, probably my only hobby. My only hobby.
If you're gonna have a hobby, that's one to have.
Yeah, it's like this is pretty cool. How quickly can I blow something up?
So do tell us more. I mean, Tesla coils are impressive things. How big are they? Like,
so I should say my tiniest one. I've got a toroid that's about this big. And it sits about this high. It's about it is a solid state. So this one's not spark gap. Spark gap is basically the ones that rev up like 200-300,000 volts, and you're just like, oh no, if I touch it, it might actually kill me because of the amplitude. But so my smallest one is probably about tabletop size, and then my largest one is taller than I am. I'm 5 foot tall, or just over 5 feet, so it's even taller than I am. And it's got this gigantic toroid, and that one's another solid state that I use, where I actually I like to play videos and music. So I like to make, because solid state Tesla coils, essentially you're ramping up to about anywhere between 60 and 90,000 volts at one time, and so basically what's happening is you're creating and dropping the connection for the electricity running through. So essentially you're putting all these like little bleeps in, and based on the toroids that you're using, and based on some of the like MOSFETs and some of the other sort of like semiconductors that you're actually incorporating in, you can change the frequency of the tone, so you can make music just as anybody would. So I like to play Super Mario Brothers a lot with it. Yeah,
I've seen videos of that. I would love to see that. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, next time you come to Austin, I'll bring one in and I'll build a little
I'll
Tesla
be here the
coil.
rest of the week.
Okay, cool. I should bring in one of my Tesla coils.
Though it's only partly related, I still have a commission out for you to build me a desktop Jacob's ladder.
Oh, I can.
Because I'd like a Jacob's ladder for my home office. It has to be shielded though.
Oh yeah, no problem. Well, I mean, yeah, I can do shielding. I can do the one that I have right now actually has a nice big plexiglass casing around it.
Perfect.
As well, so your child will be safe. It's nice and tall, so you're okay.
I'm looking for the mad scientist lab effect. Is what I'm going for.
Oh yeah, no. If I could, I'd probably turn my home into like a mad scientist lab, and when I walk in, I'd have fog misters or something. And that'd be perfect. I build a nice little app in C++ Builder and have it connect. I'll set up Brad's server at my house or something, and just when I walk through the door, it'll just be all this fog and nice Jacob's ladders turning on.
That's actually one of 3 pieces that I want for my mad scientist lab. So the first one is I've already got is a vintage oscilloscope.
Oh wow!
The vintage oscilloscopes just look like for anybody who ever watched Fringe, Walter's lab. Right. The second thing I want is the Jacob's ladder to be running in the background, and the third thing I want to get is a mannequin that I can dress up like the observers from Fringe.
You should also get a cow.
Right, and maybe a cow. But no, I think it would be great to be sitting there coding away and have an observer watching me, like a life-size observer.
That would be cool.
Especially for your live streams.
For my live streams, that would be great. Yeah, that's what I'd like to have in there, along with my other kind of kitschy Doctor Who stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta love Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the music. I mean, do you program that?
So actually for controlling the music, I actually use Mathematica, so Wolfram Alpharim's Mathematica, because I understand a little bit. It's more mathematically based, so I can kind of play off music and math, which is another sort of kind of hobby of mine. I enjoy playing instruments, so I'll typically use that and then just pipe through, and since the tones are sort of almost designed for it anyway, but yeah. I like to design as much as I can, and I enjoy more server-side things than UI. So I will be coming to you, Serena,
Right.
to help me design some of the front end, because
Yeah.
if it's basically in a straight line, I'm okay. If it's anything beyond that, on how should this look? Yeah, don't ask me.
So Glenn commented that rule number 1: electronics run on smoke. When the smoke gets out, that's when it stops working.
It's that mysterious blue smoke, right?
Yes. So, are you familiar with Boyan Mitov's Visuino?
Yes.
Isn't that great?
It is. I've bought every like the last Code Rage and stuff like that. That was probably, since I was at work, having to work and things like that. Code Rage, was sort of off to the side while I was working. I kind of stopped all work and just sat there and stared.
So we just did a podcast with him 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and it talked about he's got a Visuino Pro he's working on now.
Oh, I'm
that
excited.
lets you preview the code in real time as you're connecting things up. It'll show you your C++ code. If I remember correctly, that's what it does. And I'm like,
I'm excited. Well, if that's what it does, I'm extremely excited then.
It's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I'm a huge fan of that.
He also said that he's optimized, because this is Pro Edition for
Industrial
the
automation.
manufacturing and industrial automation.
Sweet.
So he said he's optimized the code output to such a degree it's already something like 50% better than it was. He says the next stage of optimization, he believes it will outperform a handcrafted coder. So big claim,
cool.
but yeah, I'd be excited to see
Well, if
that.
that can happen too, then half my dreams are going to come true. So,
Yeah. There's a little too much effort to code all of that by hand, but that makes it so easy.
yeah, it does, because there is surprisingly a lot more code than people realize when it comes to Arduino.
If you do something serious
if
with
you
it.
want to do like some actual real work with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I built a robot because so I wanted a robot that essentially could pour a perfect amount of a drink for me. I figured this.
That's a worthy. Yeah.
I was like, that's actually pretty cool. Like I could sell this if I wanted to in the future. But it's mostly just because who wouldn't? It's like you don't want to sit there and have to like measure out an ounce or something, of your favorite beverage. You're just like, okay, I just want to be able to control it from an application. Just hit a little button, pours a drink, maybe even serves it to me if I happen to have the remote control robot.
Can you throw in
add some beacons to that, and based on wherever you're sitting, it'll come bring it to you, which would be legit.
Can you have him mix up baby formula? Because that would save so much time.
You probably could. You probably could, actually. I mean, I did make it so that you could actually drop like 1 or 2 ice cubes based off whatever you wanted, and it was essentially like spinning on a lazy Susan, so you had like a mixture of 6 drinks that you could choose from. Yeah, it's pretty legit.
Pretty cool.
But so I realized with that took up way too many lines of code, so more or less the project had to be partially scrapped.
So I'm going to turn right back here to the screen real quick because I see you got to take off here. You have
Yes,
another
I
meeting.
do.
So anyway, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for everything. Anything you wanted to say before we go, or?
If you haven't downloaded a 10.2.3 trial, I would recommend you have a look.
And then
all those great
Thursday we
templates
have
and
the
Thursday
webinar.
we're doing a launch webinar. Yes, so that's a great time for you to also ask your questions to product management. It will be myself, Marco Cantu, and David Millick, and that's at 2 different times on Thursday morning.
Yeah. So talk to everybody then.
All right.
Thanks
you.
a lot, Shane,
Bye.
for joining us. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so we're swinging around here to Craig now, one of our usual suspects.
Hello.
So, what were we going to talk about? Oh, so did you study computer science in school?
No, I actually, in the UK we have separate terms for college and university.
Uh-huh.
Most people say college and they mean university.
Right.
College is kind of in between, and it's typically you go to college if you don't have the grades for university or if you're going for a vocational training. And so I did go to college. I went to 3 different colleges and either left or was asked to leave all 3 of them. Well,
there's a story there.
Okay, I'll share
3 stories.
I started programming similar to yourself, not on a BBC Micro, but actually a Trash 80, a TRS-80 from Tandy, and then I had a Commodore 64 for a while, which was basically the same thing but more memory. And so I was already, submitting things to magazines and stuff, and my claim to fame is I invented a technique for creating a 17th color on a 16 color palette machine, which I did with a bit of assembler. So I already knew a bit of coding, and I went to college and started learning Pascal. And I think back then it was Turbo 5.5 was what we were using or something like that, and we had access to Delphi as well. In this course, the tutor turned to the classroom and said, and most people there were green to programming. One of the kids gestured, it was Novel Networks, was the security software at the time. And one of the kids gestured, oh, I'm going to hack your computer, to the tutor. Right? And the tutor said, we run Novel Networks here. If any of you are capable of hacking into my account, I'll buy you a Mars bar. So the following morning, when I told him his password and demanded my Mars bar, this tutor said, okay, well, I'll be genuine and I'll get you a Mars bar. However, IT wants to have a chat with you. Okay.
I may or may not have gotten into trouble in hacking networks when I was in school.
Yeah,
they weren't always as secure as they thought they were.
I was a kid, you know. And so then I moved to a second college in the same town, and a friend of mine actually was in the IT team there, and he called ahead and said to me, you want to be careful here because there are friends between the two colleges and they've heard about you. And so, you know, watch yourself with the computers. I sat down and I wanted to increase my screen resolution. It was stupidly low res for no good reason. Mm-hmm. So I altered the screen resolution and I go off to lunch. I come back and there are 3 guys from the IT team stood around my computer saying, why were you in the configuration files? I said, I changed my screen res. They didn't ask me to leave, but I decided that it was probably best that I don't continue at that college because I was being monitored. I went to another course as well for some evening classes. But the truth was, I also semi-voluntarily left the first one because I was already coding and the level that they were teaching I was already ahead of. And being a young, arrogant teenager, I didn't think to myself I should stick around and get a bit of paper. I thought, why am I bothering with my time here, and quit. And pretty much immediately after that whole flirtation with colleges, got myself a job writing database code for a mortgage company, for a financial organization, and built their database app, and then was hired again by another Delphi company, and so on and so on. So I've been doing it about 23, 25 years now. Worked for on some of the biggest software systems across the 2 continents. I mean, yeah, been quite fortunate. The job that actually brought me to Texas was a greenfield redevelopment of an existing product for monitoring large-scale mobile networks like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint. These are our customers. Mm-hmm. So I worked on some very large-scale software applications and databases. And then when the time came that they wanted to send me back to England, I said, well, actually, I've met somebody that I've decided to marry, and I don't want to go back to England, so I need a job. And actually, I could go into far more detail on this story, but while I was away getting married, a former manager from the UK met with another former manager from the UK at a Delphi conference and got talking about me. They'd never met each other before, but Stephen Ball and Charles Lindsay got together and they were talking at this event, and Charles said, oh yeah, Craig's over in Texas now, lives in Dallas. And Stephen said, that's interesting because I work for Embarcadero and there's a job going in the Austin office. And at the time, I'd already prepared my resume to apply to Embarcadero to try and stay in the country with the company that I could use Delphi at. And so, serendipity of serendipity, I get back from my wedding/honeymoon, and there's an email saying, you should apply for the job going down in Austin. So I did, and that's how I ended up working for Embarcadero, sorry. Yeah. I'm also, I flirt with electronics too. I have no physics degree, but I know enough to burn my own fingers. I started out, not on Arduino actually, but with PIC microcontrollers, which are super old school. Anybody that, I did a balloon flight, one of my hobby balloon flights, and the second to last flight I did, everyone in the group that I was working with was asking, why are you not using Arduino? And I said, because I've still got a cache of all this PIC microcontroller stuff laying around. And their response was, yes, but they don't have a UART. Well, no, but I've written a software UART for it. You did what? What language? Assembler. Assembler of PIC UART? So, yeah, it was something crazy. But, you know, I've been doing it since a kid. I've got that code lying around, so, yeah.
So the trick for me is I write that code and then I can't find it again later.
That's why I started using. My brother used to yell at me because we would get working on projects together, and my brother's a self-taught genius in 3D Studio Max and in various music composing packages. So he can do graphics and he can do audio, and I can do coding. So we always wanted to get together and build a video game. And every time we started our video game, we did some little ditties together. But every time we start on an ambitious project, I would say, I used to have code for that, but I lost it. And so he once told me off about this and said, you need to get some kind of backup, and I now have version control.
Jay just posted, said that's what you use Git for.
Yeah, I just started migrating actually from Subversion to Git because $7 a month GitHub will host your private repos as well as public.
Yeah.
So I just started migrating, and I restarted building a video game engine from scratch, which I'm live streaming every keystroke more or less. And that project is now temporarily suspended till probably next week because I'm repolishing the AI code I was working on a couple of months back because I have a customer for it. So lots of stuff going on, and I'm actually trying to find time to do all of this while also planning to move to Boise, Idaho, because I wanted to be Jim's neighbor.
Yeah.
So in 3 weeks' time, we've got to move, and we have packing to do and cars to fix and things to sell and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we're having fun right now. Being quite busy.
For certain definitions of the word fun.
Yes. Yes.
For certain values of the word fun. Yeah.
With a 1-year-old running around the house, cheating us out of about 6 months of crawling by walking early. And, yeah.
Now, with your balloon launches, do you use Delphi in any of that?
I've not actually. I did these before Viswino was available, and Delphi, of course, doesn't target Arduino without the third-party tools.
Right.
So I considered launching an Android at one point because so one of the key problems with these balloon flights, you're doing it really for the photography. So they're weather balloons for anybody that doesn't know that's watching. So these are large weather balloons. They get to about 7 feet when they're fully inflated, great big latex balloons. And they can carry maximum about 2 kilos of weight. So you have to fit a camera. Typically, I'm going for cheap reusable cameras because I could fail to get it back. And the circuitry to track the balloon all has to go on board that payload. And to keep that under 2 kilos with the weight of the parachute is a bit of an engineering challenge. I mean, it's actually, there are ways to do it, and it's not overly difficult once you know how, but it's something somewhat challenging. And so putting a full-scale Android device on there would have the advantage that it could potentially transmit images back during the flight. At the moment, you have to recover the payload to get the images back. But the Android would have enough bus speed, potentially, to run a USB camera and cache the images and transmit them. Problem is, the batteries to run a device that's capable of doing that with those bus speeds is heavy and is going to add to the weight of the project. And the other engineering concern on that is bandwidth. It is illegal, quite highly illegal, to run a cell phone at altitude, which is why you can't use them on most aircraft. And so not wanting a visit from the FCC, I know there are other people in the hobby in the States that flout this reg, but I don't. Not wanting a visit from the FCC, I don't fly cell phones or Wi-Fi. So I'm transmitting at about 300 baud on an old radio and tracking it with a ham. And for that reason, it would take too long to transmit the images anyway. And therefore, why put the weight of the Android and the battery on the payload if all I need is telemetry, right? So, I tend to use Arduinos for telemetry and don't use Delphi because it didn't target Arduino. So.
You also have your ham radio license, right, Mary Kelly?
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I would that probably could get me in trouble.
KF5WIX.
If I remember correctly, I think the FCC changed the classification on cell phone transmission at altitude.
Right.
But you probably know more about that.
So there were some reg changes as well just a couple of years ago for the... I haven't flown a balloon in 2 years now, I think. But there were some reg changes for the drones. And, drones becoming a bit of a nuisance around airports. They were never supposed to be flown near airports.
Right.
So the reg changes came into effect on that, but they are transmitting video back to ground. But their altitude is way below what I'm getting. I'm getting edge of space type altitudes. 120,000 meters was my first.
Now you're seeing the curvature of the Earth there.
Seeing the curvature of the Earth.
Which means you're part of the NASA conspiracy trying to brainwash all the flat earthers.
Exactly, to think that the Earth is round. And just for the record, no, I do not use fisheye lenses for that reason. You can actually see the curvature. So people have asked me why I don't fly GoPros, and the reason I don't fly GoPros is because they are fisheye lenses. And what you'll see, you can go on YouTube, this hobby, so I started in the UK and there was a small, actually surprisingly more people doing it than I expected in the UK, and more recently in the US. I know that it actually originated here, but in the US more recently a new group has formed doing the same thing, and every year now they have a competition for these balloon flights, but they are not anywhere near as strict with the regs as the UK guys are. And so I kind of shy away from getting involved with them because I'm sure one of them's going to, either ruin the hobby for everyone by crashing into a jet or something. And I don't want to be involved in that group too much. So hopefully they start to adopt some of the regulations and what have you. Where was I going with it? But yes, if you look on YouTube, you'll find lots of videos of people flying GoPros. And when you watch them, if you watch the horizon line, you'll see it go from curved down, like the Earth's curved, to literally inverted and back.
Really?
Because as the camera tilts up and down, that fisheye lens is blending both ways. And frankly, not only do I find that kind of image nauseating, it also is not a true image of what that camera should be seeing. So I'm maybe a bit of a purist. I like to rely infinite focus lenses and try to get... and I'll never get an actual perfect representation of the curvature of the planet, but to get as close as possible with commodity cameras. So, yeah.
Now, you did just install an Android in your car, though.
Yes. So I actually first installed an Intel PC in the car, and I had an Intel PC in a little heatsink-based case tucked away in the trunk, and the wiring on it was hideous. I kept meaning to go back and tidy it up. But I started a project to build a UI for it, and never did find enough time to finish that project. And because it wasn't my primary passion, if you like, wasn't what I was, it was a secondary project for me, I decided to can it. And instead of using the full-on PC, put an Android in. Now, when I started building out the PC for the car, Android devices like the one I just bought were not readily available. You could get them, but they were kind of difficult to find. Now you can get full-on Android in-dash car computers, couple $100 from China, and it does everything that I wanted my UI to do. So I just installed that, and I actually installed it for the road trip to Idaho when I relocate, because I didn't want to have a drive without music. So so I put one in my car, and I'm installing one in the van that my wife will be driving up as well. So looking forward to writing some apps for it.
Cool.
That'll be awesome.
Excellent. All right. So Jay commented, by the way, he says, Craig really must not like our weather since he's moving to Boise.
Actually, the weather's a lot to do with it, but more than the weather. So I love the heat. I love the fact that daylight hours go on into the late evening here, which, being from the UK is maybe 3 nights a year it does that. But the humidity is really quite oppressive.
Yes.
And more so than the humidity, when I moved to Texas, I did not have allergies. I now have an allergy to just about everything that Texas can throw at you. Because as I've been told since that when you come to Texas, if you stay for any length of time, you will acquire allergies and they'll never leave you. And it's because the cedar and ragweed are particularly aggressive. And once they get into you, the other allergens have more of an easy time getting in.
Especially in Austin.
So in Austin especially, it's been
because you can see
really
the
rough.
yellow.
Yeah.
If either of you see yellow on the sidewalks while you're
You can
here,
see it.
that's literally just pollen.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
My car
all
currently
that
has
yellow,
a green coating.
Same here.
And I've cleaned it 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and it gets this
Yeah.
green coating over the paint.
Yeah, so if you ever see yellow in Austin, it's just
Yeah.
pollen. So walk away, put a face mask over yourself, and hopefully, you won't get too bad of allergies.
It's the real bad part of the allergies is it's not just a bit of hay fever.
Yeah.
It manifests in several different symptoms, which includes lethargy, which includes headaches, which includes sinus issues and sore throats and all this other stuff. And I find that continuing to live here, because these are pretty much all year round, you might get a couple of months over the winter that you're free of them. It's actually having a really big impact on my lifestyle. And so I've just decided, you know what, Boise is not necessarily entirely better, but it is a lot less humid, and the allergens, they don't have anywhere near as much cedar up there. So
So were you influenced by the fact that Jim lives in Boise?
It was kind of a parallel influence, because my wife and I my wife's a very avid skier. She's won medals skiing, and she wanted to live in a mountain town. She's always wanted to live in a mountain town. Particularly since my son was born, she wants to get back on the mountain and get back into shape skiing and what have you. And so she wants me to take her to a mountain town. And I said, well, I can't go to a mountain town because I work in tech and I need the internet. And the mountain towns don't have internet, and I need an airport to get back to my job in Austin. And typically the airports in mountain towns are little domestic. So I said, I can't do that. And so we looked around, and Boise has mountains, and it has, within 40 minutes, it has an airport, and it has schools and museums and things for the kid. Zoo, nice zoo in downtown Boise apparently. So it just seemed to have everything we needed there. And so, once the rent in Austin, which by the way is ridiculously overpriced at this point, once they said that they were putting the rent up again, we looked at it and said, well, we're not renewing our contract. And then we decided, well, we could just move somewhere else in Austin, but why not consider moving to Boise or elsewhere? At the same time, Jim got in touch with us and said, my neighbour just decided they're moving out and they're renting, and that property is going to be available. And we inquired after it, and unfortunately it's not available. But there was a parallel line of thought going there with moving up there. So.
I get that. It's interesting because most people, I almost tried to turn the camera around to me. A lot of people think, oh, no one want to go to Idaho. But it's so crazy how often I run into people. Like I was at a Google event.
So many people are moving there, aren't you?
And someone's like, oh, I saw you were from Idaho. Man, I really want to move there. Tell me about it. And I'm like, really? You want to move to Idaho? But there's a lot of people moving into Idaho. And when I was traveling back and forth between the Scotts Valley office and Boise for work, like once a month or something like that, and there are a number of people that did that as a weekly commute.
Yeah.
They lived in Idaho, but came down to California to work because they just, especially people as they're getting closer to retirement, they're like, I'm going to buy a place in Idaho because that's where I want to live, but I'll just finish my working up here in California so that I can finish up my career. But it's a pretty popular place to move to because and there probably are other places that fit this, but because of the fact it's like Craig said, you got skiing right there, you got lots of outdoors. It's not incredibly populous that it's overcrowded, but it's still big enough that you have the things you'd like to have, expect to see and stuff like that. So I know you're looking to move from Estonia, so
you can't move every Delphi developer to Boise.
Yes, I can.
So we'll just rename it from Idaho to Delphi. And we're ready to create a town, rename it, and every Delphi developer lives in Delphi.
That's right.
Well, actually, the Boise
Delphi.
rental market has, in just the last 12 months, has increased 8% in the rental prices. And every estate agent that we've spoken to, and believe me, we've spoken to a lot, has said everyone's moving to Boise right now. There's a lot of people going from California out that way, as you said, and from Austin and all over the place. And the tech industry up there is apparently it's sort of burgeoning on pre-explosion. We looked at a couple of places, and apparently, though I know nothing else about the place, North Carolina currently has a thriving tech industry as well. But these are the places that are not so known about with tech offices. Yeah. And so they kind of, if you get in early, you're getting in on the secret, So, yeah. I'm
one of the coordinators for the Boise Code Camp.
Right.
And we had 800 people in attendance, just in the local area, mostly just in the local area, at our Boise Code Camp, just like 2 weeks ago, on Saturday. Which it's the largest code camp outside of California on the western United States. and that's the largest also tech in Idaho. But there's a lot of companies in Idaho doing analytics. Tons of Java developers doing analytics in downtown Boise. It's a pretty big thing there. But there's
Too bad about the Java part, but analytics.
Yeah.
But analytics is really.
And by the way, energy is really cheap up there, so the mining rig's good to go.
Awesome.
Yes, hydroelectric power. And back then, there are quite a few Delphi companies there. When I got hired by Embarcadero, I got all these people contacting me like, "Hey, let's go out to lunch. I'm doing using Delphi. I'd love to talk to you." So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. We have a tech partner that lives in Boise too that Asta Technology. They make a smart thin client.
All right.
Oh, right. Actually, we have a lot of customers using that.
Yeah.
Me too. A lot of customers. I've had to learn.
Yeah. So Boise, I like it. Actually, Craig, I'm going to swing back around to you.
Okay.
Real quick. What's something? There goes the camera.
It's like hello again.
What's something some recent features or something that you're really excited about in the product here?
Oh, in the product.
In the product.
Okay. I'm thrilled to have. I know it's kind of a surface level thing, but I'm thrilled to have the dark theme.
The dark. Oh yes.
Thank you, David. That's really exciting. I love the partnership that we now have with CData. Really is helping us.
Yes,
to
enterprise
interconnect
connectors. Those are really cool.
Yeah.
I know Serena put a lot of work into those.
Yeah.
And that's something people realize is that this enterprise connectors are essentially a new product that we made with CData.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the licensing is different too, because if you get the ODBC drivers from CData, they're per user, where ours are per developer.
Right.
So if you're the only one using it, yeah, the ODBC won't be cheaper. But if you're planning to actually deploy this to customers, enterprise connectors save you a ton of money.
Yeah. And it's a fantastic product. So basically, it's taking everything that's great about FireDAC, which is that you can use FireDAC to homogenize all these different database engines, right? And doing the same with other data sources, Twitter and Salesforce and all the QuickBooks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So effectively, in theory, though I've not tried it yet, I want to try this, but in theory, you could take a query against a Twitter database and join it to a table in a MySQL database. Doing a join across database engines like that, which is obviously something FireDAC is capable of.
FireDAC is amazing at.
It's amazing for it. Yeah, that's just fantastic. So one of the reasons why when I was moved out here, I was moved out to manage a greenfield development project, and the project was to redesign the existing app that we'd been selling into. I think there were a couple of major customers. I think AT&T were the biggest, but we'd been selling this to them for back of house. It monitors their network, collects data, and so on and so on. And part of the reason that they wanted to migrate is that they were moving from Oracle as a data backend to Teradata, which they later changed their mind on, which actually really flawed our product. But they were moving from Oracle to Teradata, and our product was centered around Oracle use. But this was pre-FireDAC, so we were using the Oracle components connectors. And so part of my job was to remove all the Oracle connectors to put in the Teradata code. So that was front-end stuff, and then we also had the back-end stuff that we were doing on the actual cell towers, the devices that run on them, collecting data and all that stuff. So if I'd had FireDAC at the time, I wouldn't have bothered putting in separate code for different database engines. I'd have done it all through FireDAC.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of money that must have been spent on that migration, FireDAC could have saved a ton of money.
Yeah.
Part of it, they flew me back and forth from the UK, must have been 4 times in a 6-month period. Just paying for my tickets alone outweighs the cost of FireDAC.
Yeah.
They could easily have saved a lot of money there, but of course, FireDAC wasn't available to them at the time. I think they were stuck on an older version. So yeah, good reason to upgrade and get with the latest tech.
Yes. Kerry Jensen, I'll spin it around to you. I'm talking now. Kerry Jensen, who's, if you don't, everybody knows Kerry Jensen. He's a big database guy. He, when we first started coming out with FireDAC, I'm like, hey, Kerry, you should write some more about FireDAC. He's like, well, I'm still looking into it a little bit. He's a little hesitant because he's very much methodical, I guess maybe is the right term. He doesn't like, just jump and get excited. He wants to make sure he's legitimately making a good recommendation, but he did a consulting with a customer, he's telling me, and they were having some weird performance and strange errors and stuff like that. And he's like, well, let's just try switching to FireDAC and see if what that does for it. And he said, fixed all the strange errors they're having. The performance was incredibly better. And now he's just like, I don't care what you're doing, get on FireDAC. To get on the latest version, it is such an awesome framework. He's written a book on FireDAC, and he's very, very enthusiastic about it. And which for good reason. I really, really like FireDAC. Now, I'm not saying, I know some people love Unidac, and there's lots of other great third-party frameworks out there. That's great. Pick the one that works best for you. But if you're still using some old database framework and you're not on FireDAC, get on FireDAC, because it is a great framework for that. Glenn pointed out that Portland has both good coffee and a good tech industry. So
I want to move to Portland. So whoever this person is, Glenn, you said?
Yeah, Glenn.
Yeah, I want to move there. No joke. That's like been my dream for the past 6 years.
I will not move there purely because I've watched that program with Fred Armiston.
Portlandia?
Yeah. And I'm sorry,
no,
but
I've seen that. But no, that's been my dream. I was like, at first I was like, oh, I want to move to Seattle because, you got like Microsoft and stuff like that. Now this was like, back when I was like graduating from high school, I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. And then as of, basically like, 6 years ago, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm moving to Portland. One of these days I'm going to call up my boss and just be like, can I move? Can I do what Craig's doing? Can I move to Portland?
So actually, when I was sent out here, I was given the opportunity of working either in Dallas or in Seattle. And I also had at the time an offer on the table from a financial institute in London that was using Delphi for their back of house code. And the London job would have been a significant increase in salary, even versus what I was taking to come to Dallas. And so it was very tempting, but it would have been sort of 12 to 18-hour days, commuting of 45 minutes each way by train into London because I couldn't afford to live in London. And so I had that offer on the table, and I was given the choice of Seattle and Dallas from my existing employer. And they sent me out to each place to see how much I liked it, if I wanted to go live in Seattle or live in Dallas for 6 to 12 months. And so I thought to myself, well, I've got this offer, but this is an opportunity to see a bit of the world. I'd not really left England. I think Dallas was my first place leaving the UK at the age of 34. So I was really, no mind broadening going on for me. I was pretty much a home boy. But I moved out I went and visited both places, and I had to choose between them. And what the deciding factor was, when I moved to Dallas, of course, it was in the middle of the heat wave. So you've got beautiful sunlight right up until the wee hours, and everybody's super polite. People would stop 3 to 4 feet ahead of me and say, excuse me, and allow me to pass and hold doors and all that kind of stuff. I thought, there is real hospitality here, I love it, right? But then I went to Seattle, and the weather was basically the same as the UK. It's on the same latitude. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the attitudes that I encountered were about the same as the UK as well. And
it must be the weather.
Basically, I got a choice between Dallas being this really pleasant place that I visited, or England and America. Well, I'm leaving England. Let's go to Dallas, right? And so I've not really had any interest to go. I did the tourist thing. I enjoyed it. I kind of fired a gun for the first time because, of course, in the UK there's no handguns. Yeah. So I really enjoyed myself and did the tourist thing while I was there, but wouldn't have opted to move there based on my experience, my visit. Boise, on the other hand, I've never visited. We're moving without ever having seen the place, but everything I've seen about Boise online is it's very hospitable, very pleasant, outdoorsy. Maybe I can shed some of the masses of weight I put on coming here by being a bit more outdoors. I find that the summers with the oppressive heat in Texas, it gets so bad that it's like being in England when it rains. You don't go outside, or you're dodging from doorway to doorway to get the air conditioning, right? And so I became much more stay in my own home, don't go out so often, don't go for walks, because by the time you've walked a quarter of a mile, the sidewalk has ended and you're hot and sweaty. So it doesn't seem like in England it's very commuter. I can go walk to the supermarket and carry my bags back with me. Out here, you can walk to the end of the pavement and there's a highway in your way. It's not commuter friendly. And so moving to Boise, I actually get some of that back, that I can, be a bit more active and outdoorsy.
I think Boise's pretty pedestrian friendly.
So.
All right, I'm going to spin around here. We're running out of time, but I do want to give Mary Kelly a chance. Now, I know you're a big Interbase C++ fan.
Yes,
So-
I am an Interbase person.
Interbase,
In
what's
the
some cool
office.
stuff going on with Interbase that you're excited about?
Oh, there's so many cool things with Interbase. Like, probably I'd say the biggest thing with Interbase is our server-wide performance monitoring. It's probably my favorite thing. So now you can look at each of the databases that are running. So, a lot of our customers, a lot of our customers have are basically VARs or value-added resellers. So they go around and they set up these servers in some location, like on AWS or an Azure instance, and they then deploy out different databases so that they can sort of almost have like a multi-tenancy effect, like Rat Server, to each of their end users. So each of their customers or clienteles or anything like that, and they'll each have their own databases. Well, with server-wide performance monitoring, you can now monitor each of the databases and their loads while everything's still running. You've got all the databases up. You're still fully functioning, and you can kind of then almost use it as sort of like a analytics, if you will, or like a pre-analytics to determine where you're going to end up probably having bottlenecks or where a heavy load might be or transactions. And you really can get a full, bigger picture on how each of the databases are performing. So that's probably my favorite feature about 2017. And then also just we've had some amazing features over the last couple of years, like change views. So now you've got like the mobile syncing. We're going to be doing a webinar on that,
Yeah.
where that includes that with mobile. And with essentially change views, is you're able to, for instance, take a database offline. You can have your database directly on the device and actually have it sync to the server. So you've got this database server, you're syncing between the data. So if you go offline, you can connect back up, and all of a sudden the data that was in the server gets synced back and forth between mobile devices. If you made any changes, anything like that, you still have all those features. And then we've sort of updated our SQL compliancy. So Interbase is a SQL 92 compliant database, but we've added in some of the SQL 99 and newer features. So essentially, Interbase is one of those rare databases that's kind of making its big comeback.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing product, and it's just got amazing features, and it's very easy to use and to implement. You don't need a DBA to run it all the time, so you're saving tons of money compared to SQL Server or Oracle. Those Oracle database developers and DBAs, they're making big bucks for a reason.
I used to work for a company that did Oracle DBA, and the joke was Oracle would give you the database just so you'd buy the DBAs and services. Exactly. It's all what it's about. It's about selling really the services.
Oh yeah, it really was. I mean, because with each edition, for instance, with Oracle, you've got to go and basically redesign your entire database between each of the major editions. I mean, obviously there are things that are going to stay the same, but a lot of times you kind of have to know how, understand the mapping, and even if you want to implement new features, you've got to make a couple of tweaks and changes and know where to make those changes. But with Interbase, it's you back it up, you restore it, and boom, if you're in the current on disk structure, then you have a database that's fully able to use the newest features. So if you've got a really old database that's 20-something years old and you want to update and restore it and say, hey, you came out with this new feature, I want it, back up, restore 2 hours later after you validated it and stuff like that, you now have access to use all of these new features. And guess what? You did no programming.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's kind of like the, I'll go ahead and turn around this way, kind of the same way with, I talked to some other people that do, I have a friend that does Swift development.
Yeah.
And every time there's a new version of Swift comes out, he's like, nah, I got to rewrite everything.
Exactly.
And that's something that, Delphi, yes, sometimes you do have to make some changes when there's a new version. You have to update some things or whatever. There are changes, but
very rarely.
Delphi's got such a commitment to that. And if you're not out there seeing what the rest of the world's like, you really don't appreciate how good we have it with Delphi and C++ Builder as far as this commitment to, really, it's a commitment to our investment as developers in our code.
Yeah.
Is it's respect for that, because most other programming languages are like, yeah, you wrote it yesterday, who cares? It's like, no, that's an investment.
It's a disadvantage, I think, that, sorry, David.
I was just going to say, it's really common to not sort of have technology that plans for being used in 10 years' time, and we do. I mean, you can open something with Delphi or Seaboard that was built 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and it'll run.
Yeah.
Nice little build.
And we want you to be able to do the same thing.
Yep.
Now in the version that we have out in 10 years.
Yep.
And there's so many frameworks and libraries and languages where that's just not something you can rely on.
And it's not even like, a lot of stuff, there's not even like you could migrate to it.
Yeah.
It's just like, nope, you're throwing that code away because
Yeah.
it's a year old.
Do you know, I think the biggest advantage Delphi has is the Pascal language. Because the Pascal syntax, if you look at the BNF for parsing the Pascal syntax, it's a single pass, it's elegantly designed, everything just fits and makes sense. And every new syntax feature we've added, even those that I thought were unnecessary to add, just seemed to fit. They the language itself was so elegantly designed to begin with that it has taken the advances through time, which is juxtaposed to languages that have committees controlling them and design committees and all this kind of stuff. But on top of that, who is the committee for Pascal these days? We are the leading vendor of Pascal compilers, and so if you look at any of the other Pascal compilers, I had this little debate when I was discussing it with the TIOB Index guys a while back, but if you look at any of the other Pascal compilers out there, be it Free Pascal or is it Code Blocks or something is the other one, and there was Oxygens and there was even SMS and all this kind of stuff. SMS has actually made some changes now, but all of these other compilers, if you look at their mission statements or their About Us pages, they'll say we are a clone or a work-alike of the Pascal syntax made popular by Delphi. And that remains true to this day. Delphi is the standard. There's no committee behind it but Embarcadero. And being such an elegantly designed language to begin with, that means that when a new feature comes along, we don't have to shoehorn it in. It just fits in.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a big, strong advantage. I saw David smirk when I said committee because of C++. But C++, it's the most popular and most commonly used language on the planet. I'm not knocking it, right?
Yeah.
But it does have a committee behind it, and that does show. Whereas, it's a perfectly good language. I would use it myself. In fact, I have done on many occasions, and it's used in a lot of places. But Delphi doesn't have that disadvantage of a committee. It can be advanced the way that it needs to.
Yeah,
I think the committee thing. Sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
I think the committee thing can help. I mean, C++ aims at a different thing to Delphi.
Yeah.
And there are some very, very smart people on that committee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, people a lot smarter than probably all of our intelligence combined in this room.
Well, I want to say I'm
Yeah.
not knocking it. My issue with committees is not that they necessarily do a bad job. They don't. They often do a very good job. But that usually the interests of a few big players in the committee are what drive the direction.
Yeah.
And you'll see this with, for example, the tensions that caused the API wars between OpenGL and DirectX, for example, because Microsoft, being the vendor of DirectX, was on the OpenGL, the Kronos committee. And so they either drove features or they would quietly pay attention to the features that were coming in OpenGL and make sure the ones in DirectX were better, or whatever the case was. Whereas if you are in a situation that you don't have that committee, then it's somewhat liberating. You can serve directly the needs of your products.
There certainly are pros and cons both directions. I would agree.
Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
and if you think about it too, kind of going off what you were saying, it's almost sort of like we with Delphi sort of add in the features, or add in the functionality that Delphi developers want at the time. So it's almost sort of more like it's organically grown compared to where designed by a committee. Where I'm not knocking obviously
No.
C++. It is my language. It is my main choice of language between the two. If I had to do away
That
with
actually
one of them.
is.
And so I just sort of think of it whenever we come out with these new features or we add in these new functionalities or we change up something with the language. It's the developers at the time want sort of
Get
from
what
an
they want.
overall want this, and it's sort of more democratic compared to, like you were saying, it's more designed with C++ because we don't come out with a new edition every single year. I mean, if you look at the versions that we have for C++, you've got 11, you've got 14, now you've got 17, you're going to have 20 or whatever that you want to talk about next. We meet together as a group, a couple times a year, decide on different things, you know, and sort of implement standards. Now, C++ is a more, in my opinion, it's a more difficult language to learn, so that can be sort of the reason why you have to have more of a kind of standardized committee to be able to implement these things, because there's so much functionality and so much that people want to do, because the community is so much larger with C++.
Yeah. But actually, so that's one of the interesting things is that I think C++ got a committee because it needed a committee, not because the committee needed it.
Yeah.
And
I think Jarn or like Herb or something like that might not. I'm sure that
agree.
They might have some words to say about that.
Sure.
I think they might.
But so that in my opinion. So here's the thing: when you said about designed versus evolved effectively, now I would normally say that a design system will always outperform and be better than an evolved one, because an evolved one didn't follow a design pattern and therefore very often gets kind of fragmented. And I think that C++ got the committee it needed, and they've done great things for the language.
Yeah.
I think that
past few years.
Yeah, and I think that Delphi is a kind of a unique case of one of those languages where it was so well designed in the first place that the evolutions to it have not impacted it, and therefore it doesn't need a committee, because it wouldn't have suffered from those changes. That's not to say that, like I say, I joke that C++ needed a committee, but they've done great things for it. Yeah. It's just those same things were Delphi's strength is that it didn't need that to get those features. So yeah,
I think there's something good about a small design group.
Yes.
Sort of leading the language. I mean, Delphi is growing, and we add things, but we add sort of things we specifically choose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And verging on areas that I can't talk about yet. But we do look after the language and take care with it. Try to. Not sure how exactly you'd phrase it, but taking care of the.
As a carekeeper,
Yeah, because I mean, like we've all said, we're sort of the designers, we're the keepers of the language, and if you really want to do Delphi development, you're going to use Delphi. You're going to use our product. Unlike what we saw with C++, there's literally 1,000,001 different IDEs you can use compared to just ours. So you have to be able to implement all of those, and there's just way too many new features or even old features, and so it's just.
I want to wrap up here and give David a chance to say something.
Okay, can I just vindicate myself real quick?
Okay, all right.
So the one thing I would say is that, of course, I talk the Delphi game because I'm a Delphi specialist, right? Mm-hmm. But we're all developers. We've all used multiple languages. We all know that they have their strengths and weaknesses. I love C++ too. I just love Delphi more.
Yeah, and I would actually add that is that I think that it's fine to talk about the strengths of Delphi and why you think it maybe has some advantages or something like that. Doesn't necessarily mean I used to be in the boat that I was like, if it's not Delphi, it's terrible, and I would fight. I don't care what you're doing or why you're doing it. I would fight you why that was the wrong choice unless you're using Delphi. Now I realize there's lots of great languages and there's pros and cons to everything.
Except Java.
I've done some Java. Java's not terrible. I prefer Delphi. I love Delphi. I think Delphi's great. But that does not mean everything else is terrible. But I will, David, Tim23, lots of great new C++ related features in there.
Very much, yeah.
And I know you've done blog about a few things. Anything you want to talk about here real quick before we wrap it up?
Well, yeah, I have blogged a lot, but if you haven't read those, the two main C++ features are rename refactoring and command line CMake support, both of which are really good. So rename refactoring, of course, is really useful, great for code maintenance. So I highly recommend if you have 10.2.3, just right-click on something, try and rename it. It's very useful. CMake is something I'm really excited about, though.
Mm-hmm. It actually opens up a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. So I think that in the past, Seaboard has been a bit of its own silo, like its own sort of area just by itself. And I think it's really important for us to open up to the wider C++ community.
Yeah.
And adding CMake support is part of that. Now, this is actually CMake step 1. We have more planned. Although, obviously I can't attach a release date to that. So Sorry, I always have to be careful what
Yeah,
we
I
say.
know,
You know,
it's
but-
tough.
but,
For me, I have a hard time remembering, wait, what did we release and what are we working on next and what's down the road? And it's like,
It's like,
Yeah.
have we done this?
Yeah, so it leaked-
So some of the stuff that I want to talk about. But yeah, CMake in 10.2.3 we have command line CMake support, so you can use that for all of our claim-based compilers, so for Win32, Win64, iOS 32 and 64 and Android, and basically just take a CMake project and build it. Now we have a number of cool things there as well, so for mobile that includes deploying to the device as well as part of the build process. And you can do all the things, you know, if you have an iOS device, then we added a whole bunch of custom CMake macros. You can set all the info.plist and other kind of options that you need to set. So we have full support there. And if you tune into the 10.2.3 webinar on Thursdays, I demonstrate just building a FireMonkey up with CMake, but I also take a Google test just as an example of a useful third-party library and build that as well.
oh wow.
Just to show how you can just pull something in and build it. And of course, once it's built, you can link it into your existing C Builder app, something like that as well.
That's great, yeah.
So it's really making that very easy just to take third-party C++ code, because there's a vast amount of stuff out there, a huge number of third-party C++ libraries, which we want to make it easy for you to use with C Builder.
So if like any standard C++ library has CMake support, we can now generally support that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is
So
awesome.
it's not that you can take like if someone builds something with Visual C++, you can pull that in, or only if they're using standard C++, or is there a line there with how that works?
Well, the vast majority of libraries will have a CMake project description.
Okay.
And with anything, there are occasionally little quirks where someone might have written it with a CMake list.txt file, but only tested in Visual Studio. And so there might be a few macros you have to define, or something that you have to tweak. But you do that anyway. It's usually very simple. In fact, for Google Test, we did that. An intern, Nikolai Avramov, who's done great work, and he had to make 3 changes of 1 character each, or something like that. It's very small.
It's one of those things that it gets you there, and you can do the work to finish it off.
Yeah.
We're developers; we can write some code.
We've done a lot of work in C Builder recently as well, just to try and make it more compatible, just so you can take code like this and not have to make changes to things as well. And we'll do more of that in future.
Now, there's a feature called Ninja somewhere, isn't there?
Right. So
that's not a secret, is it? Is it?
No.
Okay,
So I've described CMake as a build system. That's sort of true, but not true, because it's more of a sort of compiler agnostic project description. And when you run CMake, it will generate files that you use with an existing build system, whatever your toolchain is. So that's called a generator. So you run CMake over the CMake list, which describes your project or projects, and it might turn it into, say, a standard old-fashioned makefile. And it uses that, using a generator to create the makefile, and then you actually build then using make.
Okay.
So the key thing with CMake is that it just works regardless of what compiler toolchain you have. You have a CMake described project, and you can just download and use it, no matter what compiler you have, and that now includes C++ Builder, which is such a good thing.
Right.
Now Ninja is a very fast parallel build system.
Oh, okay.
So we explicitly support using Ninja with C++ Builder. And so all of our demos, all of our samples, that kind of thing, use it as well, just because it's very neat to...
runs across all those cores you have on your system.
It does, yeah. So you get roughly linear scaling of compile performance. So the VM that I've done most of my recordings on has 2 cores assigned, and it's twice as fast, and if you have 8 cores, it'll be 8 times as fast roughly.
Wow. Yeah.
We do have parallel compilation in the IDE in C++ Builder, but Ninja is a really neat, really
Does
powerful.
Ninja support network building?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's very lightweight, very fast
Right.
system.
Because I remember seeing, I think it was a Visual Studio thing, plugin, that did distributed compilation for a previous employer. Had a huge code base in, I think it was C#, and it would use all of the cores on the network to compile things. And it was fascinating, first of all, that it was needed, But then, second, the way that it worked, you know, you would get a build that on a single machine would take a couple of hours, and it would be done in seconds. Developers could work live with these parallel processing. And I was sitting there thinking, I wonder how it manages all the linking. It's you know, because you've got to transfer the binary from that machine and then link them. So yeah, it's fascinating. But if it doesn't do that, that's great because you've still got your local cores to.
That might have been Incredibuild or Electric Accelerator.
Incredibuild rings a bell.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, something we are looking at as well is to really decrease build times. Because that's one of the things with C++. It does take a long time to build sometimes.
Especially in Delphi.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you have a million lines of code in, what was it, 4 seconds in Delphi?
Something like that,
It'll take longer than that in C++ builder.
Well, to be fair, Delphi also has, there's pros and cons of everything, right? So the reason that it can link so quickly is it can make use of existing DCUs, which have both interface and implementation information in them. It's not header and obj. But the disadvantage of that, of course, is DCU compatibility. So, yeah, you get the build speed, which is great, and then you go, oh, now I've got to rebuild it because I need a new version. So,
Well, we have a lot of things sort of planned, either sort of actively being planned or just sort of on the back burner kind of thing. But build performance is definitely something we're aware of. It's something we want to improve. Just because C++ can be slow doesn't mean that we should accept that.
Yeah, that's great. Challenge the assumptions, exactly. So real quick, Glenn says he's planning to move from Denmark to Portland. So maybe you both will move there and meet each other in Portland together.
Yes, I'm more than happy to do that. I like to go visit at least like twice a year if I can.
Cool. And Roland points out that Pascal's great on German keyboard layouts because the curly braces are terrible on those.
Well, also, if we could just let Glenn know that after he moves to Portland, he should come and visit the rest of the Delphi community in Boise.
That's right. That's right.
It's only a $200 flight. I mean,
we're close.
Yeah.
Neighbors.
Not that bad.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Mary Kelly for sticking around the whole time, and Serena was here earlier but had to go, but this was great, and everybody else here in the Austin office has been fantastic. I just can't wait to hear back at me. It's great getting down here in the Austin office and getting to meet everybody. There are lots of people here that I talked to that I tried to talk into coming in there, like, no, I'm not. There's a lot of great people here doing good stuff, so it's good to see it. Very excited, passionate other people involved in all aspects of making our products amazing, so it's fun to be part of. So thanks everybody, and thank you everybody here for in the room, and we'll see you all later. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Bye.
Stop streaming.